Hey, I'm so glad to see you. Welcome back to this week's episode of Closed by Mo. My name is Mohammed. I'm hopefully your favorite YouTube host on most things real estate. I'm also a real estate investor and a realtor based out of New York City, and lately I've been getting involved in more and more commercial transactions, so I figured it was about time to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about the commercial real estate side of things. So in this week's episode, we're going to talk through a couple of the most common real estate terms that you'll come across in commercial leases. Now, this list is by no means any kind of comprehensive guide to all things commercial real estate leasing. This is just some of the most common terms that I've been hearing as I've been entering the world of commercial real estate more and more. Now, to start us off in this list, it is what we call a gross lease. A gross lease in the world of commercial real estate is basically something that a lot of people are already familiar with. It's wherein a commercial tenant will pay the landlord just a fixed monthly payment, very similar to like a residential rent payment, and the commercial tenant is not responsible for any property maintenance, any of the property taxes, or sometimes even maybe the property utilities. Now, a net lease is different than a gross lease because in a net lease, the tenant is still paying a fixed amount of monthly rent, but the tenant is now responsible for something other than just their monthly rent. It might be the property taxes, it might be something or another with the property maintenance. One of those things or a couple of those things, even maybe utilities or water usage, things like that they've been able to figure out during the lease negotiation stage that would not make that a gross lease. Now, the third type of lease is what we call a triple net lease, and this is basically mail check money for the commercial landlord, because in a triple net lease, the tenant is responsible for not just their rent payment, but also any maintenance that the building or their space needs, as well as property taxes, utilities, and anything else that the landlord was able to negotiate with the tenant to make sure that the tenant was able to secure the place in return of that negotiation. Now, the fourth thing to also keep in mind with commercial real estate spaces or commercial real estate leasing, should I say, is there's a difference between rentable and usable square footage. Now, what I mean by that is usable square footage is basically what you might already be familiar with. Is, let's say you have an office space you have leased out. Your office is the usable square footage. The rentable square footage includes the usable square footage, but also includes common areas, and that might include like a common hallway, an elevator, or maybe a lounge area that the tenant will be paying most likely their share of the common spaces, and that goes into the rentable square footage that ends up being calculated in the lease that the tenant will pay for the payment towards the landlord itself. Now, the fifth thing to keep in mind with commercial leases is there will always be a type of escalation clause. Although commercial leases typically start out at around 5 years or maybe around that 5 to 10 years, every single year will have a certain escalation that the landlord and tenant will be able to negotiate together. That might be 3%, 5%, whatever percentage that the landlord and tenant are able to agree on. The sixth most common thing that a commercial lease will have is what we call common area maintenance. This is very similar to rentable square footage in the sense that common area maintenance is basically part of the rent or maybe a separate fee that the tenant will pay that goes towards maintaining the common areas of a space. For example, if you're renting out a private office in a big building, you'll have a portion of your lease payment be counted towards common area maintenance, and that money will be used by the landlord to maintain common areas around the building, like maybe the parking lot or the elevators or even the lounge areas, things like that that might be used by any and all tenants. And if you are enjoying this type of videos, do let me know, guys, because I'm trying to think about ways of doing more commercial videos in the near future. I'll leave it at that for now. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. Have a good day.